everyone. I'm Senior Editor Laura Calugar, and you're listening to Mission Success Women in Multifamily, MHN's monthly podcast series dedicated to female leaders in the multifamily industry. March is National Women's History Month, a period reserved for the celebration of women's achievements. And while it's true that we at Multi Housing News do that every month on this podcast, it still feels special to be able to share the voice of powerful women who have left their mark in the multifamily industry. My guest is an experienced architecture and urban design specialist based in Los Angeles, an area that was recently devastated by the deadliest and most destructive wildfires in California's history. Alexandria Hoevel recently joined Corgan's LA office as multifamily studio leader and vice president, and she agreed to share her thoughts with all of us. Hi, Alexandria. Thank you for accepting my invitation, and happy Women's History Month.
Oh, happy Women's History Month to you too.
For those who are not familiar with what you do, tell me a bit about yourself and your career so far. I know you recently joined Corgan's LA office, but your experience spans more than 2 decades, right?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me on today, and hello to folks listening. I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona and started my career actually in high-end single-family residential straight out of college. Learned a great deal from the experience. It was really hands-on. But after a while, I wanted to work on projects that had a more positive impact on community building and design. So I left LA and went to San Francisco, spent some time working with an affordable housing architect up there who does great work, but then came back down to LA because the weather was nicer. um, I tried to find similar work down here, but ended up doing high-end residential again. And then I guess, a blessing in disguise for me in my journey is that the market crashed around 2008 and the high-end residential work ended, but I was able to find a job at a firm locally that I had only heard of a few times. They actually designed the first transit-oriented development in my hometown, and that firm is called Mullen Pulzoides. We were doing some terrific urban design and planning level work. I ended up spending a good chunk of my early career here, got to travel around the US and the world designing these amazing communities. And it was here where the desire to work on multifamily really began. There's this great social need, and a lot of what we do as architects has nothing to do with the building itself. It's about understanding the context for where you are building. So got to help design and contribute to many wonderful projects while at this firm. And then, eventually after 12 years, I wanted to move on and work on large projects, specifically in Los Angeles. So I left and worked at a few firms with a greater focus on community building and really went on a mid-career vision quest to understand what was truly needed and how to design more efficiently while still getting to build beautiful multifamily projects that could also somehow give back in a way to the surrounding communities. Was also considerate of, how much what we were building costs and, making sure that they were on target with similar community types in the region. It was like a dream where everyone should be proud of where they live, and really felt like that was what I wanted my mission to be. And, after establishing some studios for others in LA, I broke away and founded a small firm called Studio A Architecture and Urban Design with a mission to help more developers and community leaders with strategy and pre-development. We were building a lot of strong community relationships and had projects forming. I was gaining some momentum, but eventually, the reality of trying to build something in a tight market with so much competition really hit me. And I realized I need help amplifying the message. So when I met Stephen Lohr at Corgan and he mentioned that they wanted to start a multifamily studio, we had very similar beliefs on what the ingredients to successful projects actually are and what matters in design. Corgan has an incredible reputation for being great architects and collaborators on top of that. So I knew this was a sign to take a trust fall and join them, pour what I had built on my own and that local knowledge base into establishing our studio here in Culver City.
So you clicked with the Corgan family.
I did. I did. It was a great decision.
And what do you enjoy most about working as a designer in LA? I know you're a native of LA, so it must be really satisfying to see how your hometown evolves and bring your contribution to its growth.
Yes, I've lived in LA almost my entire life, and my family has lived in the Pasadena and Altadena area for about 4 generations, so a long time. And I remember when I was a kid growing up here in the 80s, there were places we couldn't go. So we couldn't go downtown. We weren't even allowed to go to Old Town Pasadena. And, it was too derelict and rough and run down. There was a lot of crime and open drug use.
Mhm.
Um, I think what I have really enjoyed most about being an LA native and contributing to the changing landscape here is getting to see those places that were off limits at one point in my life become thriving cultural hubs for the arts and businesses. These are places now where people live and are raising their families, and I just think it's fantastic. The redevelopment that's occurred downtown with all the adaptive reuse of old office buildings and warehouses, it's happened over the past 25, 30 years, though it's somewhat stalled after COVID. It's been exciting to see the sea change that's occurred. And down there and in all of the other city centers in the LA area. So, yeah, having an impact there and being part of the change, having contributed, I think, is probably what is most satisfying to me.
You mentioned Pasadena, and I must ask about the ravaged parts of LA that went through those deadly and destructive wildfires recently. As an LA local, it must have been devastating to watch how entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash. How have you perceived this massive destruction?
Well, I knew you were going to ask this question, and full disclosure, it may be too soon for me to be fully candid. My parents still live in the same house they brought my sister and I home from the hospital to, which is about a mile
Well,
or less. Yeah, a mile or less away from where the Eaton fire stopped along the east flank.
oh my God.
Yeah, their house is fine, but the recent fires were devastating. What you have to understand is they followed decades of multiple wildfires coming very, very close to urban areas and increasing threats. They've been getting worse and worse. And I'm not sure anyone could have anticipated the fire coming down as far as it did in Pasadena and Altadena. I probably speak for all impacted in those areas, Altadena, Pasadena, Sierra Madre, Pacific Palisades, Topanga Canyon, Brentwood, Santa Monica, and Malibu neighborhoods and all the surrounding neighborhoods. When I say that, the fires were not only devastating, they were heartbreaking. Everyone I know here either lost their home, incurred property damage from the wind and smoke, or knows somebody who did. Um,
Mhm.
I think we're all still in shock and maybe angry, piecing lives back together, and there's a lot of hurt. What we lost is unmeasurable in human lives, homes, and whole neighborhoods, small businesses, schools. We have like the backdrop of a lot of memories growing up, starter homes, our dream homes, and maybe even our grandparents' house, just gone.
I
So
can only imagine how much suffering, and I couldn't even watch those videos, those images. It's horrible.
yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, we're really resilient people with big hearts, and it's been amazing to see the outpouring of support that has come from the community. But just for anyone out there who's not in LA, understand that these hearts are pretty broken apart right now.
There are many voices who argue that these cataclysmic events should trigger a rethink as to how the city could grow back. Massive fires, as you said, have happened in the area before. So some people ask themselves whether it's a good idea to keep building in the same places. At the same time, LA has very limited options when it comes to unexplored areas for development, right? What's your view? Are there any alternatives?
Oh, absolutely. This is a great question, and I'm going to uncouple the fire rebuilding efforts from our development woes to kind of speak to both more holistically. because we're in a housing crisis also, and this is all
Right.
somewhat related. So to zoom out for context, Los Angeles is massive. Um, Most of the areas impacted by the fires now struggling with cleanup and rebuilding efforts are suburban and foothill communities or areas on coastal bluffs, canyons and hills, all bordering the wildlands of either the Santa Monica or San Gabriel mountain ranges. It's actually a smaller percentage of the built environment in Los Angeles that was impacted. Development in most of LA has been historically suburban. We saw a huge boom in growth post World War II through the 90s of these bedroom communities and, think sprawl, low density, but then with denser city centers downtown and around the port near Long Beach. And then you have that along Wilshire, you have higher density and high rises skirting along through Century City, making their way out to Santa Monica, and then as we creep into the valley, you kind of have this a similar density along Ventura Boulevard. So, but think about it, all of this is very spread out. If you can imagine, the land area of Los Angeles Basin is 1,200 square miles, and there are over 80 cities in LA County alone. So I would argue that while we're becoming limited in new unexplored areas, we're not actually running out of space or land options for development. And that, the real issue is that we need to strategically go back and densify in those existing communities that need it. It's not about building out anymore. It's about building up and filling in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I think the best option we have is to continue to densify and build up along our major transit corridors and hubs. TODs or transit-oriented developments have been the trend for a while now. There's also been a huge push to densify the single-family neighborhoods, and I think this is a great idea in communities where there's available transportation and the existing infrastructure can handle such growth. Some of the older neighborhoods in LA, in the more hilly places like Silver Lake, you see more issues as we densify and some more growing pains. Not that it's a bad area to build in, it's just going to be more difficult. I think in the flats of the LA basin, we can easily handle more density and redevelopment as long as we're being socially sensitive. So we've been in the throes of this major housing crisis for some time now. And LA County's 2024 housing count showed that we are short some 500,000 homes. So that's our starting deficit, right? We're short
Mm-hmm.
500,000 homes, and we have 13,000 households displaced by the fires. So we're just going to throw that on the pile. Drop in the bucket, really. So
Yeah.
we have a big problem. Rental markets and communities near those fire areas are seeing record vacancy lows. There's a lot of demand in a high value market. It's estimated rents here will see an increase of over 10% in the coming years. So that's good news for developers, right?
Exactly. Definitely.
There have been many recent measures to help address the housing crisis, including the mayor's Executive Directive 1. The new LA zoning code tries to make a difference. It just went online. There are lots of state and local initiatives, and I'm not going to go into specifics or else we will be deep diving into housing policy for over an hour. But these measures are working towards increasing allowable density and allowing multifamily and affordable housing on land that previously wasn't an option. But even with all of the incentives, the city of LA saw a 27% drop in new multifamily permits in 2024.
That's a lot.
So it's huge. We've got high property values, low vacancy, high demand, incentives to build. What is our problem? We are not seeing these issues in neighboring markets like Orange County. Irvine is booming. Our local housing policies are a step in the right direction. But a lot of these affordable density incentives have caveats like prevailing wage requirements. That's always going to add about 30% to construction costs that are, already sky high.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that costs are the main impediment.
Huge, huge impediment. High land values, elevated interest rates. They're coming down, but they're not
Everything's
down
high
yet. Everything's
costs
high.
at all levels. Yeah.
It all adds up. And then we have these ever increasing insurance premiums that are further impeding our progress to building more homes. But I'd like to highlight something else. Many folks listening will probably add ULA and CEQA to our list of well-meaning laws that have become barriers to new growth and development. For those listening who aren't familiar, ULA is the United to House Los Angeles Act. It was passed by voters and took effect in 2023. And it's also called the Mansion Tax. It added this special tax on real estate sales over $5 million in the city of Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And this was meant to help fund various programs for affordable housing, homeless support and prevention, senior income support, rental assistance, so it's for a good cause, but the tax is like 4 or 5%, which is higher than your closing costs.
Mhm.
So that's not helping. I know a lot of developers that have decided not to pursue new development in the city of Los Angeles because of ULA. Um, CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act, which was passed in 1970. And as architects, we hear a lot of complaints from our friends and clients about both ULA and CEQA. Environmental reviews can add years to the entitlement process for projects in California, and I believe that the governor has lifted secret requirements for permits for fire rebuilding efforts that meet the requirements. So I think you have to be under 110% of the previous project's square footage, and then you have an expedited review and no CEQA. Um, and there's some affordable housing projects that can also get full exemption. I'm not really promoting policy here, just mentioning that both have become additional hurdles for rebuilding and just building in general in LA. Okay, so now that we've painted the backdrop, we can talk about fire rebuilding efforts.
Yeah.
The neighborhoods lost. Most of those homes that were destroyed were single family residences. They're duplexes or mom and pop owned multifamily communities. There's some larger ones there, but fewer. And for each individual owner, insurance, funds available, or their personal circumstances are going to all be different. In the more commercial Main Street areas impacted, I think there's tremendous potential in rebuilding smarter and denser, incorporating mixed use multifamily housing more frequently, and rebuilding, making better use of the land available with more fire resistant materials.
We need to rebuild in a way that limits future damage and further challenges brought on by climate change and severe drought, right?
Absolutely. With the single family residences rebuilding, I urge folks to consider adding an ADU to the effort. This is a additional dwelling unit that can be in your backyard. It can be permitted and erected faster than the primary home can be rebuilt. It also gives those homeowners that were displaced somewhere to live during reconstruction and a rental unit to add to the community housing stock afterwards, after they're able to move back into the main home. It's another idea for attainable smart growth. I think this is one that can be utilized in all residential areas in LA, not just burn areas. In Altadena, we lost neighborhoods with homes and establishments that were over 100 years old. And there's been the loss of generational homes in California's first middle-class Black neighborhood. While we rebuild, I think we need to be mindful of how we can support the community's legacy and existing residents and do what we can to keep it intact. So what is impactful, socially sensitive, more fire resistant building look like in practice? And it's a good question. We've been studying the answer to this and working together with local community leaders to try and find the answer.
And this leads me to my next question because I noticed something on Corgan's website that caught my attention. In your website presentation, you said, how we design buildings is a reflection of our times, ever evolving to meet people's changing requirements and expectations. Could you please tell me more about your approach to multifamily design today? Has it changed throughout the years? Has your experience changed your views? What are some key considerations today?
Oh, completely. Multifamily design has changed so much over the last 20 years. I think it's getting denser. We are incorporating more walkable neighborhoods closer to public transit. And I think that is a great move. Reducing car dependency and breaking the commute patterns for a larger percentage of the population are really a step in the right direction. And I think the TOD and podium projects with retail on the ground level we see all over are a testament to that.
Hmm.
Uh, a few decades back, this new typology sprouted from older ideas from older urban centers that hadn't been raised for the automobile and really helped urban areas recover that Main Street walkability we lost in the 60s. I think that trend is here to stay, but we're seeing podium, type 3 and type 1 projects pencil out less and less. In LA, we're seeing more projects with smaller units or communal living options that are similar to dormitory suites for adults in the workforce. We're seeing projects with no parking, projects that are utilizing offsite construction and mass timber as ways to minimize construction time to completion. Uh, Developers are having to get creative to get more than a single digit ROI, and that's how tight it can be. We take our time to stay on top of these options for our clients while also staying on top of what renters are looking for in these communities. So we're designing a product that meets everyone's needs. And with that, I'm going to pivot because I would love to talk about this report we just did. At Corgan, love to stay on top of market trends. We are data driven in our approach to design. So much so, we have our own research team called Hugo.
Wow.
And Hugo and the multifamily team spent over a year studying the answer to your question. And we just published a report called Residency Reshaped, which goes into a deep dive on what renters want out of a community and why they end up staying. And, when you have long-term habitation, when you don't have a lot of renter turnover, you're able to get that natural community to grow in your developments, and that keeps people in their communities. That sense of belonging, that sense of place. I was mentioning before the factors impacting housing in LA, but those issues are prevalent in almost every major metro market in the US. So
Right.
as the price to buy and insurance premiums have risen, renting for longer has become more attractive to more affluent and mature households, not just low and moderate income households. So we started to ask renters what they wanted and what drives how we're designing, right? So
Hmm.
walkability, access to amenities and community, a mix of uses, and the flexibility to live and work within the space. There are more families renting. Over half of all renters cohabitate, so spaces that allow for roommates and family members to have their own space within a unit are crucial. We're seeing better amenities, nicer kitchen and bathroom layouts, more meaningful interstitial spaces. Those are like the spaces between buildings. There's an inherent need for outdoor connections, smart layouts that maximize density while not compromising the community experience. I think that's key.
Hmm.
In LA, and I think in many parts of the Sun Belt, actually, health and wellness are really big. I know a lot of building operators will discount the importance of a pool, but in warmer climates like LA's,
It's
a pool,
mandatory.
yeah, oh my gosh, absolutely. It can be a key factor to whether or not a renter moves in. And we are also seeing that two key factors are affordability and location. And interestingly enough, renters tend to stay more loyal to properties with good design, walkability, inconvenient locations within an established community.
Is there a specific residential rental project that you're particularly proud of? Maybe one in your neighborhood, the neighborhood you grew up in, or a project where you had to come up with innovative solutions to whatever problems.
This is great. It's hard to play favorites. I think the most rewarding projects for me have been the ones that speak to community building, especially in those areas in need of revitalization. I love urban infill projects or projects that have complex transit and civic needs and connections. So if I had to highlight just one, maybe it could be two, because they're part of a larger vision called the Mercado District, which was designed and championed by my former boss, Stefanos. It's in West Tucson. If you've ever been in the area, or if you need to visit Tucson, I recommend visiting the west side of it. The Mercado district is on the other side of the 10 freeway from downtown, and it was just vacant land off of Avenida del Convento. It's now a 14 block planned community with that's now designed and established, and the trees are big and there's a lot of life, and there's bands playing at the Mikado over the weekends in the summertime, and folks will stop and fuel up before riding out with their cycling groups. Tucson has this amazing 164-mile Peloton loop, which is a bike path that traverses the entire distance of the city. And it runs right by this project I worked on called Bautista. So this district really became a successful walkable neighborhood. And about 10 years after it was approved, I worked on these two multifamily mixed-use residential projects. One was called Monier, and one is being erected currently, and it's called the Bautista. They become these tools to engage and foster community with their open spaces and connections to public amenities like this river path. And they prioritize fostering pedestrian and human connections as a way of community building. And I think in this way, they are very successful. There's good use of more public level units as live work flex spaces or spots for smaller retail businesses. And both projects incorporate large breezy arcades and covered porches that help adapt communal living to the harsh climate of Tucson in the summer months. So yeah, I think these projects might be some of my favorites, and I'm gauging this off of my desire to go back and visit them.
I know, I mean, I can only imagine how busy you must be as an architect, as a designer, but that doesn't mean you don't have time to get engaged in various organizations. I know you're part of the Urban Land Institute, the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, the American Institute of Architects. Where does all your drive to get involved in work outside your job come from? Why is it important to you to be part of these organizations and help your community, particularly in the aftermath of the wildfires?
I think it's important to stay involved with professional organizations for many different reasons, and each organization I get different things from or can give back in different ways. I think now more than ever, it's important to stay involved. I know the AIA Los Angeles chapter has started an ad hoc fire response commission, and they're just getting some traction off the ground. Urban Land Institute has done something similar. On a non-fire response note, I will say that AIA's Women in Architecture Committee has given me an outlet for mentoring the next generation of women that are coming up. So it's been very rewarding for me. And Urban Land Institute, I have met some of my best friends in, and it's really amazing when you get to plug into a community and network and connect with folks that are part of the larger building community. You have more developers and policymakers that attend those events, and it's truly rewarding. And SCAMP, or Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, they are doing the good work and are on the front lines to try and make affordable housing more accessible and more of a reality for those in need in Southern California.
What does Women's History Month mean to you as a woman architect, and why is it important to celebrate it and to honor women this month and any month for that matter?
We should be celebrating every month. Yes.
Yeah.
Every month is Women's History Month. It reminds me of the gift that has been given to myself and all other women who get to go out there and support their own livelihood. It reminds me that this gift was hard fought for by generations who came before us, and that we have to continue to fight for the generations of women who will come after us.
Do you have a message for young women looking to enter the architecture space? You mentioned you enjoy mentoring others. Why should they pursue a career in this field?
Women are nature's creators, and I will happily promote the field of architecture to anyone because it is a true labor of love. But I will say to those who are actively in the field or working towards a degree, in architecture, just keep going. Get involved in your local AIA chapter and get a mentor or multiple mentors early on in your career. I can't keep count of all of the amazing women and men that I have learned from who have mentored me. But what I can say is that their support has been invaluable and has been the real key to my success and happiness as an architect. So take the time to nurture these relationships and allow them to grow into lifelong friendships because we're better together.
Thank you so much, Alexandria, for sharing all these insights and particularly for opening your heart.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This has been quite an honor.
Thank you all for listening. The next Mission Success episode will come online on the third week of April. But until then, you can check out multihousingnews.com for the latest news, feature stories, and podcasts. And if you want to share your own voice with our audience, just click on the MHN Executive Council button at the bottom of our homepage.